Imagine walking through a frozen European landscape 40,000 years ago. You aren't alone. Another species of human, the Neanderthals, are thriving in the harsh chill of the Ice Age. For nearly 300,000 years, they were the masters of the North. Yet today, they are gone. Who were these mysterious cousins, and why did they vanish while we survived?
For a long time, we viewed Neanderthals as primitive, dim-witted brutes. But modern science has shattered that myth. They were highly intelligent, socially complex, and remarkably similar to us. In fact, they were our closest evolutionary relatives, sharing nearly 99.7% of our DNA. To understand ourselves, we must first understand the rise and fall of the Neanderthals. The story begins in the mid-19th century. In 1856, limestone miners in Germany's Neander Valley discovered a strange skull cap and several thick bones. At first, they thought they had found the remains of a bear or perhaps a lost soldier. Little did they know, they had just uncovered the first recognized evidence of an extinct human species. To trace their origins, we have to look back over 500,000 years. Both modern humans and Neanderthals share a common ancestor, likely Homo heidelbergensis. While one group remained in Africa to evolve into Homo sapiens, another group migrated north into Europe and Western Asia, evolving into the resilient species we now call Neanderthals. Living in the shadow of massive glaciers required extreme physical adaptations. Neanderthals evolved bodies that were built for heat retention and raw power. They were shorter and stockier than modern humans, with broad chests and powerful limbs. This robust build wasn't just for show. It was a biological necessity for surviving the brutal cold of the mammoth steppe. Their faces were equally specialized. A prominent brow ridge protected their eyes, and a large, wide nose helped to warm and humidify the freezing air before it reached their lungs. These weren't ugly features, but rather a masterclass in evolutionary engineering, perfectly tuned for a world where the temperature rarely rose above freezing. Perhaps the most surprising physical trait was their brain size. On average, Neanderthal brains were actually larger than those of modern humans today. While size doesn't always equal intelligence, it suggests they possessed complex cognitive abilities. They weren't just reacting to their environment, they were analyzing it, planning for the future, and solving problems. Survival in the Ice Age demanded sophisticated technology. Neanderthals were master toolmakers, utilizing a technique known as the Mousterian tradition. By carefully striking flint and stone, they produced sharp scrapers, points, and hand axes. These weren't just random rocks. They were precisely engineered instruments that required foresight and a deep understanding of geology. Fire was their most vital ally. They didn't just stumble upon it, they controlled it. They used fire for warmth, for protection against predators like the cave lion, and for cooking. Cooking their food allowed them to extract more calories and nutrients, fueling their large, energy-demanding brains and helping them survive in environments that would have killed others. Neanderthals were apex predators, but they didn't hunt like we did. Lacking the long-range projectile weapons of early sapiens, they relied on ambush tactics. They would track massive animals like woolly mammoths and bison, getting dangerously close to deliver a killing blow with heavy, thrusting spears. It was a high-risk, high-reward lifestyle. This style of hunting took a toll on their bodies. Many Neanderthal skeletons show signs of healed fractures and trauma, similar to injuries seen in modern professional rodeo riders. This tells us two things. Their lives were incredibly dangerous, but more importantly, they looked after one another. A hunter with a broken leg couldn't survive alone. They were cared for by their clan. Their diet was more diverse than we once thought. While they were certainly heavy meat eaters, recent studies of dental tartar show they also consumed various plants, seeds, and even medicinal herbs. In coastal regions, they gathered shellfish and seals. They were flexible survivors who knew exactly how to exploit the resources of their specific territories. The spiritual life of Neanderthals is one of the most debated topics in archaeology. We have found evidence that they buried their dead, not just to dispose of a body, but with apparent intent. At sites like Shanidar Cave, pollen samples suggest that some individuals may have been buried with flowers. This implies a sense of loss, ritual, and perhaps even a belief in an afterlife. They also possessed an eye for beauty. We found eagle talons and seashells that were modified to be worn as jewelry. In a cave in France, they constructed mysterious circular structures out of broken stalagmites, deep in the dark where no natural light reaches. These aren't the actions of unthinking animals. These are the actions of a symbolic mind.
Did they speak? While we can't hear their voices, biological evidence suggests they could. They possessed the FOP2 gene, which is linked to language in modern humans, and their hyoid bone, the bone that supports the tongue, was nearly identical to ours. Their language might have sounded different, but they likely shared stories, plans, and warnings.
For nearly 300,000 years, the Neanderthals were the undisputed masters of Europe. They survived multiple ice ages, shifting climates, and the rise and fall of countless other species. But about 45,000 years ago, everything began to change. A new player entered the scene, Homo sapiens, migrating out of Africa. When our ancestors met the Neanderthals, what happened? For a long time, the replacement theory suggested we simply wiped them out through warfare. But the truth is far more complex. While there may have been conflict, there was also interaction. We shared technology, we shared territory, and most importantly, we shared our lives. We know this because of the secrets hidden in our own cells. In 2010, scientists successfully sequenced the Neanderthal genome and made a shocking discovery. Most people living outside of sub-Saharan Africa today carry between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. We didn't just replace them, we merged with them. As modern humans moved in, the climate was also turning against the Neanderthals. Europe was entering a period of extreme climatic instability. The vast forests where Neanderthals thrived as ambush hunters were disappearing, replaced by open, treeless tundras. Their specialized hunting style was no longer an advantage in this wide-open world.
Homo sapiens had a different toolkit. We used long-range projectiles like atlatls and bows, which were perfect for hunting on the open plains. We also lived in larger, more interconnected social groups. When times got tough, sapiens could rely on a vast network of distant relatives for help, while Neanderthals lived in smaller, more isolated family units.
The Neanderthal population began to dwindle. They were pushed into smaller and smaller pockets of habitat. They weren't being hunted down. They were being outcompeted for resources and slowly absorbed into the larger sapiens population. Their unique culture and physical form were fading, but their genetic legacy was being locked into the human story forever. By about 39,000 years ago, the last pure Neanderthals disappeared from the fossil record. One of their final refuges was the Rock of Gibraltar at the very edge of Europe. Here, in the caves overlooking the Mediterranean, the last of our cousins lived out their final days, watching the world they once ruled change beyond recognition.
But did they really go extinct? If their DNA lives on in us, then a part of them never truly died. Every time you feel a certain way or your immune system fights off a specific virus, you might be experiencing the legacy of your Neanderthal ancestors. They gave us the tools to survive in the cold north, and we carried them into the future.
Today, we look back at the Neanderthals not as failed versions of ourselves, but as a sister species that walked a different path. They were brave, innovative, and deeply human. By studying them, we learn that being human isn't just one thing. It's a spectrum of resilience, creativity, and connection that spans hundreds of thousands of years.
The rise and fall of the Neanderthals is more than just a history lesson. It's a mirror. It shows us how fragile life can be and how much we owe to those who came before. They may be gone from the landscape, but they are written in our blood. They are, and always will be, a part of who we are.